Okay. Welcome back. Welcome to the new people. It's good to see you guys. And it's really nice to have such a nice crowd. Now you have to stay the whole year. That's the condition. You don't have to come just one time.
It's like after one time.
So this is Shirun in Yaakov, where we go through the Yaakov, which is just a collection of the Agadah and the Talmud. And we try to compare the version of the Talmud to other midrashim and look at the commentaries and develop an idea. Whenever we come up with some chiddush at the end, we try to also close with something that's nice. And what we're up to is Bava Kamma. So we'll be going through the midrashim in Bava Kamma. And I hope by the end of the year to get through all of Bava Kamma and Bava Metzia, and maybe start Bava Batra. We'll see, depending on how much progress we make. That's the goal. So this week, I want to start by posing a question. And that question is there ever a situation where, let's say somebody does a mitzvah or tries to do a mitzvah, he has the right intention, but for whatever technical reason the mitzvah isn't done the way it's supposed to be done. So should such a person still receive reward for attempting to do the mitzvah, even if it doesn't happen? Huh?
Like tzedakah kavana or no kind of thing?
No.
Are we talking
The
about
opposite. No?
He has kavana, but there's some technical...
That's what you're getting on tzedakah kavana or no?
Yeah, but the opposite of it, which is you have kavana, but it doesn't happen for some reason.
Is this where there's a thing about like
should be punished?
I feel like there's some non-PC thing where if a Jew has kavana to do a mitzvah and he doesn't do it, he still gets schar, but if a non-Jew has kavana to do an avera and even if he doesn't do it, he still gets punished for it.
Is that right? Okay. I'm not going there.
I'm
not going there.
What would be an example?
What would be an example? Good. So if you are trying to do lulav and etrog, and you take lulav and etrog, you have all of the right intentions, but it turns out your etrog has a psul in it. You didn't realize.
No, I think it doesn't count.
It doesn't count. You don't get reward.
Yeah.
Okay.
You gotta do it.
What about if you give tzedakah, and the person is a fraudster, liar, ganav, and you wanted to give tzedakah, and he just happens not to be a poor person?
Oh, or if you ate non-kosher, but someone told you it was kosher.
That's something else.
It still counts.
That's
It still counts.
And it's about avera.
Okay.
We're talking about the mitzvah.
Or not a mitzvah.
Right.
I think no.
Okay. All right. Well, anyway, we're going to address this. The fact that you said no surprises me because I would think yes.
No, of course. I think
I say
tzedakah specific, I think, counts because you did the mitzvah at the end of the day.
You had the right intention.
Yeah, it wasn't your fault that it was a ganav. It wasn't your fault.
Okay, good. You fell into the trap. He avoided the trap. You fell into the trap. That's like that. Okay. Anyway, what you're saying makes sense. We're going to learn some Gemaras.
I'll take your lulav question.
Yeah.
Like you said it as getting everything ready, but it sounded like before you did it, you found there was a psul. What if
you don't even know. You don't know.
After you shook it.
Let's say.
The day after you found out your piton just fell, like, wait a second.
Yeah. Should you get schar bebeitin shel mala for having fulfilled the mitzvah or not? Okay. All right. Let's begin. So the Gemara is going to look at a story in Sefer Yirmiyahu, where Yirmiyahu is. We can actually just say it outside quickly that he's attacked by the people of Anotot, which is the city that he came from, that he was born in. He has these very doomsday prophecies, and they get upset at him, and they try to attack him and try to kill him, throw him into a pit, and then he, in his anger, curses them. And so we'll see how the Gemara deals with it, and it ties to the discussion that we just had. Okay, so we'll start. So just to get us into the context, the Mishnah in Bava Kamma Daf Tet Zayin Amud Bet, it says as following: Ma bein tam lemuad, ela she'atam meshalem chatzi nezek migufo umad meshalem nezek shalem min aliyah. And we know the difference between a shor tam and a shor muad, one that hasn't killed before and one that's killed many times, is whether you pay half or full. And less our point now. Okay, the Gemara says, my aliyah, when it says that you have to pay the full amount for a goring of a shor muad from the aliyah, what does that mean? Amar Belazar b'meuleshe b'nechasav. Aliyah means the nicest, the greatest of his property. He has to pay out from the most valuable. Exactly. And how do we know this? V'cheinu omer vayishkav Chizkiyahu im avotav vayikberu b'ma'aleh kivrei Beit David. Okay, Chizkiyahu died, the king, and he was buried in the ma'aleh of the burial of the children of David. Right? So pshat is ma'aleh is something, maybe some fancy place. But it says V'amar Rabbi Elazar b'ma'aleh It's a me'ulim sheb'mishpacha. What does it mean, ma'aleh kivei David? It means the greatest of Bnei David, which is umaninu David u'Shlomo, right? That he was buried with David and Shlomo. And so the Gemara then uses that to say the following: V'ikberu b'kivrotav asher kara lo be'ir David, v'yishkivu b'mishkav asher mileh b'samim uznim. Similarly, Asa, who was another king of Yehuda, he was buried, and when he was buried, Asher mileh b'samim uznim, he was buried in a place filled with spices. Mai b'samim uznim. The Gemara says, what are these spices? Rabbi Elazar amar zin. It means all different types of fragrances and things that smell nice. Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachmani amar b'samim shekol meriach behem bali de zima. And there's a drush here that Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachmani says it's spices that anyone who smells them comes to acts of lust. Okay, all this was just an introduction to the part that concerns us. This is a pasuk from Yirmiyahu, where he's complaining against the people of Anatot who attacked him and tried to kill him for saying prophecies about the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash. So he says, they've laid traps to trap me, and they've laid another word for traps for my feet, to hide, and they've hidden them. So Rabbi Elazar Amar, what is he talking about? Rabbi Elazar says, Shechashdu mizona, that it means that they suspected Yirmiyahu of sleeping with a zona. Okay? Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachmani Amar shechashdu mi'eshet ish. Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachmani said, no, they actually suspected him or accused him of committing adultery. Bishlam alaman damar shechashdu mizona hainu dichtiv kishucha amuka zona. So according to the opinion who said they suspected him of sleeping with a zona, so it makes sense, because what does it mean? Ki charu shucha lelachdeni. So there's the word shucha in the context of a harlotry. So it makes sense. But the one who says they accused him of adultery, my shucha, what does it mean, shucha? So the Gemara answers, Atu eshet ish mi nafka miklal zona. Means eshet ish is also znut. Right? It's just a much, what?
Seems it asks. The Gemara asks.
Where?
Atu eshet ish.
Oh, it's a rhetorical question. Yes, you're right. It means, isn't someone who sleeps with another woman, isn't that also a form of znut? In other words, if you're telling me znut is associated with this word shucha, oh, but what about eshet ish? Eshet ish is also znut. It's the ultimate form of znut, right? When you're sleeping with, isn't it also adultery? Yeah. And then the Gemara continues, Bishlam alaman damar shechashdu mi'eshet ish, hainu dichtiv ve'ata Hashem edatet kol tzatam alay lamavet. And now the Gemara says something interesting. It says, it makes sense according to the opinion that they suspected him of adultery, which is why Yirmiyahu says, in that same context, Hashem, you know how these people of Anatot are trying to kill me. Right? Because if they accuse him of adultery, so then he's liable for death. So that's why they're trying to kill him. But according to the opinion, it says they suspected him of zona. So, why is Yirmiyahu complaining about being killed? What? There's no chiyuv mita by zona. Right? So the answer is the pshat of the story, which is that they throw him into this pit and he gets rescued. But that it's not talking about this drush, just the pshat of the story that they tried to kill him, not related to this accusation. Okay, and then this is the key point that we're going to spend most of this year on. Darash Rava. Rava said, "My dichtiv yu muchshalim lefanecha be'et apcha aseh bahem." Yirmiyahu concludes. He says they laid traps for me. They accused me of harlotry. They accused me of adultery. You know how they tried to kill me. And so, what does Yirmiyahu say? He davens to Hashem and he says, "Yu muchshalim lefanecha." May these people of Anatot be muchshalim, fall or fail before you. Be'et apcha aseh bahem, and in your moment of anger, attack them. Amar Yirmiyah lifnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Ribono shel Olam. Yirmiyah said to Hashem, Afilu b'shah שעושין tzedakah, when the people of Anatot do tzedakah, הכשילם בבני אדם שאינן מהוגנים, כדי שלא יקבלו עליהן שכר. Make them fail. What does it mean to make them fail? Have them give the tzedakah to people that are not worthy or don't need tzedakah, כדי שלא יקבלו עליהן שכר, so that they shouldn't receive reward for giving tzedakah. Right, so Rava here seems to be saying, not like what Kobe said before, at least on the surface. Okay. Why?
Because the point of tzedakah is not just not just take out from your money to give somebody else. It's to help the poor guy to stop being poor.
Right.
It's like helping him. So if it's not going to help anyone, so it doesn't matter what you did. So the bigger the tzedakah is to give themselves. איך זה כתוב בגמרא? במקום להביא למישהו דג, אז להביא לו חכם, נכון?
Which is why I brought up before also the example of etrog, because maybe ben adam lemakom, you don't have that, right? Now, if I don't do the lulav and etrog correctly, there's no person who's being harmed.
Yeah.
As opposed to what you said, ben adam chaver, where there's also the receiver. But still, I shouldn't get sachar, even so? Even if that's true, that the person who received it wasn't supposed to. I still had the right intentions. So Yirmiyahu here seems to say no. Okay? But your point is a good point.
There's two parts, the giving and the person receiving. For each part, there's differences. There's sachar. So if you gave, and it happens to also help someone, so then it's two separate parts. If you gave, he didn't get it, and he didn't need it, so you still gave.
Okay, so what you're explaining, if I can read into what you said, is when Yirmiyahu says "Kedei shelo yikablu alein sachar," he's saying the half of the sachar that goes to the person who receives it, receiving it correctly. But Yirmiyahu can't ask Hashem not to give them sachar for giving it with the right intent. Okay. So the Nimuke Yosef, which I didn't bring here, he actually is so bothered by this Gemara in his commentary. He says that what Yirmiyahu means here is a little different from what Yonah said. Is when he says "Afilu בשעה שעושין tzedakah," when they give tzedakah, הכשילם בבני אדם שאינן מהוגנים, have them fail by giving it to people who don't deserve it, כדי שלא יקבלו את שכר, meaning have them fail by giving it to people who don't deserve it, but they doing that willingly because they have a moment of weakness and they give it to a person who doesn't deserve it. And that's why they don't get sachar.
I don't get that one.
In other words, Nimuke Yosef is saying it can't be that a person who gets tzedakah for the right reasons, just because the recipient is not worthy, doesn't receive any reward. He can't accept that idea. Mm-hmm. So he says, when Yirmiyahu says, make the people who want to get tzedakah fail and not get reward, it means make them in that moment give it knowingly to a person who doesn't deserve it. Okay?
How would he do that?
By having a moment of weakness and saying, I'll give to someone who doesn't need it. But it's a difficult answer. Okay, I want to explore this a little bit. Let's go to the Gemara in Bava Batra on Daf Tet Amud Bet. Okay, Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak Amar HaKadosh Baruch Hu mamtzi lo bnei Adam hamehuganim la'asot lahen tzedakah. Hashem finds for a person who wants to give tzedakah, he prepares for him a person who is deserving to receive it. Kedei lekabel alehem scharo, in order so that the person who gives tzedakah should receive reward for it. Okay, and then the Gemara says, Lafuke mai, what does this come to exclude? Lafuke mi de darish rabba. The darish rabba, mai dichtivim uchshen lifanecha beit abcha sebahem, amar yirmiyah lifnei kadosh baruch hu, and this is similar to what we saw before. B'no shalam, afilu b'shah shekofin et yitzran, umivakshim lasot tzedakah lifanecha. The language here is a little different. It says, when the people of Anotot overcome their inclination to be awful people and try to get tzedakah, הכשילם בבני אדם שאינן מהוגנים, כדי שלא יקבלו עליהם שכר.
It's okay, this one says Rabba, not Rabba. That's fine.
Okay. It might just be like a different in the Girsa. I think it's the same teaching.
Rabba, so it makes sense.
What do you mean it makes sense? They're saying the same thing though.
So it's okay.
But they're saying the same thing. It's the same
it's
teaching.
not the same person, so I'm saying maybe because there's a lot of Girsa.
That the language is a little different. Okay, could be. The point I wanted to bring here is that Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak makes a claim here, right? He says, "Hakadosh Baruch Hu mamtzi lo bnei Adam hamuganim la'asot lahem tzedakah kedei lekabel aleim scharo." That whenever a person wants to give tzedakah, and he has the right intention, Hashem will make sure that the person who receives it deserves to receive it, in order that the person who gives it gets reward, right? That's what Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak says.
So he would exclude a scenario that even the possibility exists.
Right. That's what he seems to be saying. What's the problem with Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak's statement?
It's going to make that other person get into a situation that he's going to have to need it.
I was thinking something a little different.
Yirmiyah's case doesn't exist.
So first of all, let's understand how he's understanding Yirmiyah. Right? When Yirmiyah says, Ribono shel olam, when the people of Anotot want to give tzedakah, make them fail by giving it to people who don't deserve it, so don't get reward. What Yirmiyah is saying when put in the frame of Rav Nachman Yitzchak is, Hashem, you don't normally ever allow that to happen. It's you always are mashgiach on the world that it can't be that someone who gets tzedakah gives it to the wrong person. So that's what Yirmiyah was saying to these people in Anotot. Do that because he has to pray for that.
God.
Go against what you always do, right? So Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak's statement is a way to explain Yirmiyahu's tefillah.
But it agrees that the star is only due when it's proper given tzedakah.
Right. Exactly. Yes.
But it's interesting because, like, unlike any other mitzvah, because logically it should just be on the person giving, Hashem makes sure that it's always, so he ends up getting star. Like, the law has to be fulfilled fully, like every aspect of it, but really tzedakah should be just on the person giving. So in this unique, like, Hashem doesn't make every lulav be kosher if you make a bracha on it.
Right.
But here, he does.
Right. Right. Going back to the differentiation with perhaps like Ben Adam Makom and Ben Adam Chavira, that because there's someone else involved, Hashem has to step in, as it were, in order to make sure that this is fulfilled, right? But what's the problem with Nachman Yitzchak's statement? Like it's okay. I'll give that people get stuck all the time to the wrong recipients. It's not true. When it says Hakadosh Baruch Hu mamtzila levnei adam, anyone who wants to give tzedakah, Hashem makes it so that the recipient deserves tzedakah. What? No one's ever been defrauded before who had good intentions to give tzedakah. Right. He's saying you can never give it to the wrong person. I'll give you an example. In fact, Ketubo Daf Samach Zayin Amud Bet. I'm glad you asked. Rabbi Chanina, there was a poor person. So Rabbi Chanina used to give 4 zuz to a particular poor person every Friday. One day he sent this 4 zuz with his wife to go give it to the ani. So Atai Amra Le Lo Tzarich. And then when she came back, she said to her husband, Rabbi Chanina, he doesn't need the money. So my chazit. So he asks her, why? What did you see? So Shmi Da'avi Kamrile. So she says, I heard, like she went to his house, and then before she went in, before she knocked, she heard him talking, or that people talking to him, and they said to him, Bama ata so'ed, bitlei chesef or bitlei zahav. So people were saying to him, how do you eat your meals? Do you eat them with like silver, chadpami, right? Silver chadpami or gold chadpami, right? In other words, like he obviously didn't need the money, right? He was playing Rabbi Chanina.
About white chadpami.
Right, exactly. So Amar, and then Rabbi Chanina makes an interesting statement. He says, "The Amar Rabbi Elazar, bo v'nachzik tova l'rama'in, shilmalei hen haynu chot'in b'chol yom, shenoma v'kara alecha el Hashem v'ya b'chachet." So Rabbi Chanina is grateful. Why is he grateful? He says, because if it weren't for people like this who trick us, we would always be deserving of sin for not giving tzedakah to the right people. He says the fact that there's fraudsters, I can say, well, I can't really give tzedakah because I don't know. Maybe he's lying. So I exempt myself from having the constant chiyuv of giving tzedakah.
So you're saying the fact that can you explain that again? What was it? So
he's saying the fact that if every person who needed money called out to Hashem and then didn't have someone giving them money, that would be a sin on the people not giving the money. So he says, but I can say, look, I don't know if he's... People say this all the time about schnorrers who come to that. So you say, wow, maybe
we have an excuse now.
It's like an excuse. The people giving tzedakah have an excuse to not always give, because I don't know if he's really... if he really needs it or not. So that's his argument for like, you know, melamed zchut on misers, you know. We don't want to give tzedakah.
Isn't there a thing about you're supposed to, even if a person's not necessarily deserving, you should be able to support their lifestyle? Like if I'm a multimillionaire, but somehow I lost tons of money, you still should be supporting my luxurious...
כי השיר שירד מנכסיו, הוא נהיה כאילו בינוני, אז האם עוד אין צריך צדקה או לא?
Not knowing yet, but no. No, so I'm saying, do you eat on silver and gold? Maybe yes, maybe no, but maybe that's deserving. Like it could be like that's what the wife's saying, but
It could be used to be millionaire, now he needs that.
Yeah, maybe that's what he needs it.
supporting.
It's 4 coins. It's not
It should also be the wife of the miser.
So first of all, you're absolutely right, and this is in the context of that discussion. Actually, this Gemara, and you're right. That is a way to understand it. That it doesn't mean he's exempt. He doesn't need tzedakah, but perhaps the way to understand it is, if he's already at the level of using gold and silver tablecloths, this 4 zuz is not tzedakah that is relevant. Perhaps that could be one way to understand it. It's like he either needs a lot or not. It's not. That's not going to make a difference. But just to your, just a quick tangent to what you said, because I heard an idea once that I really liked. Actually, my Saba taught it to me, my father. He said right after that halakha is taught. No, your Saba, my Abba. That right after that halakha is taught that you have to give someone tzedakah according to their level of wealth. The Gemara tells a story. It says once there was a guy who used to be really rich and used to be led around on a horses by servant, and then he lost all his money. and he said, this is how I used to live. And so it says Hillel went and took the horse and led him around the city, right? And that's the Gemara there. So the traditional way to understand that story is Hillel's trying to teach the halacha.
You don't have to give the money, but you should.
To show that he needs that tzedakah is not just you put money on food on the table, but that if he's used to that level of livelihood, you have to give him what he's used to, and Hillel's teaching that. But the idea I heard is that what the story is really saying is Hillel is teaching this guy. You think you're such a gadol that you need the gadol ador to come lead you around. It's like, yes, that's what the halacha says, but you should really check your own, right? Like, and it's like it has a double intent to the story. So it's a really good. Anyways,
maybe this guy in the Gemara in Ketubot should be selling his silver or gold cutlery instead of receiving stuff.
Right, it could be. It's a tricky question, right? Like, what is the level of? I think about this a lot, just on a personal level. Like, what is the level of, comfort versus luxury versus necessity? It's all subjective, and when do you say it's too much versus something that's reasonable?
קומוניקציה דופקים לך לדלת ואז פתאום מוצאים אייפון 16 כזה.
We are with it
Yeah, it's being announced.
I think there are schnorrs who fly halfway across the world. They also, so they have to collect money, and you can afford a plane ticket. Yeah, it's. That's why tzedakah doesn't have. There's no Gemara on tzedakah because you can't dictate it in the way that you can dictate Shabbat.
It can never hurt to give tzedakah.
Unless they're a liar, in which
and
case
it still can't hurt. You're helping them out. If they're a liar and they're coming to ask you for $10 and you give them $10, why are they lying to give? For $10, something they need it. If they need help emotionally,
there are people who have done intense scams. I'm familiar with a family in Florida. They set up campaigns, online campaigns.
Clearly, they need help in some aspects of it.
Starts at $10.
Then why are they asking me for $10?
Because everyone gives them $10, they make millions.
Right, they have issues, so I'm helping them with some
issues.
Anyway.
So, let's continue. So the Gemara here concludes to what we just talked about. It's kind of relevant. Tanu Rabbanan, hamisamet eno, ve'amatzbet bitno, ve'amekapeach et shoko, eno niftar min ha'olam ad she'yavo lidei kach. Someone who pretends to be blind, or someone who pretends to have a limp, or someone who pretends, right, that he pretends to be nebuch in order to scam money out of somebody. So the Gemara promises he won't end up leaving the world until he ends up suffering from the ailment that he is pretending to have, right? That a person who tries to scam others won't get away with it. And someone who receives tzedakah and doesn't need it, he won't leave the world until he actually needs the tzedakah for real. Okay, so the Gemara is insisting on the justice in the world, but note that the reason I brought this is this whole Gemara is assuming that it can happen that people get defrauded. Right, which seems to go against Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak's claim in Bava Kamma that whenever someone wants to give for the right reasons, Hashem will ensure that the right recipient will come along. Okay?
Is an actual theology of measure for measure, or just a warning against?
You could take it even further. Then, if I'm meant to lose, so I'm not it's also on my side. It's not. You're defrauding me, but I'm also meant to lose, right? So not really losing because it was meant to happen. It's.
That's what I'm saying.
As I'm saying, it's it all works out at the end.
You're saying like that thing with the Ir Miklat, that the guy who kills Bashil gave it the warning, and then it's the ladder.
If I'm defrauding you as a cripple,
yeah.
So I won't. I'm saying I won't die before I become a cripple.
Right.
But it's if I'm meant to lose, whatever it is, the fact that I gave it, that was my cue, my loss, and then.
It keeps going. Right.
Yeah, it's like a.
Yeah, it's like that the thing about someone who kills somebody and there's no witnesses, right? And he gets away with it, and then there's the ladder, right? The famous Gemara, the ladder falls, and eventually Hashem makes it so that everything catches up. There's always karma, and that's what this Gemara seems to be arguing also. And yeah, it's a theology of Chazal that there is that idea of midah k'neged midah. Sometimes it's not always apparent. Sometimes it might take time, but eventually. You'll come. Okay. The Maharsha says as follows. Ein Perashat Tosfot. V'nira defar. Oh, sorry. So what is v'nira lefarish od k'ma she'omer Bava Kamma de Bava Batra Deba'oset tzedakah ktiv matan seter yichapeh. Okay, when it comes to someone who does tzedakah, it says a gift in secret yichapeh af. It can overcome anger. והכל ביקש ירמיה שיהיו מוכשלים בעת האף בנתינתן הצדקה לבני אדם שאינם מהוגנים שלא יקבלו עליה שכר ולא יכפה צדקה שלהן את האף. In other words, why is Rava in his, or Rabbah, why are they bringing tzedakah to Yirmiyahu's? Right? Yirmiyahu in the pasuk, he just says, right, they should be mukhshalim lefanecha be'et apcha aseh behem. There's no mention of tzedakah anywhere. Where does tzedakah come from? So the Maharsha is trying to argue it's because we know this idea that if someone gives tzedakah, the Gemara elsewhere says it overturns anger. So Yirmiyahu is saying, right, in your moment of anger, punish them. So it needs to be in the context of even if they're giving tzedakah, you should punish them. Okay, so that's the Maharsha. All right, I want to learn the Iyun Yaakov now, where he says Darash Rava, which is actually I think in the second screenshot. Yes, you see Darash Rava. It's about 8 or 9 lines down in Darash's big letters, all the way on the left side. If you can see it in the screenshot there, in the picture. Darash, yeah, it's not. I keep calling it a screenshot. What?
It's very clear though.
The 10th line. The 10th line. It's the 10th line.
They have an app to straighten it, but okay, whatever. Okay, Darash Rava. Okay, it's the 10th line. Okay, Darash Rava. מה דכתיב יהיו מוכשלים לפניך בעת אפך, okay? אפילו בשעה שנותנים צדקה, הכשילם בבני אדם שאינן מהוגנים. That's the Gemara. Okay, he says, "Ayin b'marsha v'nir lekach yitpalel Yirmiyahu lehem be'onesh zeh." Right? Why did Yirmiyahu ask for them to fail with tzedakah specifically? V'lo al shar mitzvot, right? Not in some other way. Shichshelu bahem. Levi sh'Rava sover kav Shmuel bar Nachmani. So now the Iyun Yaakov says, Rava reasons like Shmuel bar Nachmani shechashdu me'eshet ish. What's the connection between this Gemara and the previous one, where there was an argument about what they suspected him of Zona or Eshet Ish? She says he actually holds the more extreme, the version that said that they suspected Yirmiyahu of adultery, and therefore what? Chudita Bava Kamma desota the kol habal Eshet Ish afilu otzet tzedakah beseter dichtiv matan beseter yichapeh af afilu achi lo yinatzel midina shel gehinom. So they accused Yirmiyahu of adultery, which is so terrible that even if a person gives tzedakah, that doesn't overturn your gzera of being punished for adultery. So Yirmiyahu was paying them back in kind. You're saying you accused me falsely of committing adultery, which even someone who gives tzedakah cannot overturn. So now I'm going to ask Hashem that even if you give tzedakah, the punishment against you won't get overturned. Okay, so the Iyun Yaakov is tying the Gemara here to the previous Gemara. Okay, I want to get into some of the more interesting pieces now as we wrap this shiur. So first of all, Tosfot says, if you remember we said before, right, there was a machloket about whether it was, there was a machloket about whether they suspected him of being a zona or being with a zona or being with adultery. Okay, and so Tosfot says, "Di Yirmiyahu Kohen hava v'zona asura lekohen." Like when Yirmiyahu is upset, he talks about how they've laid a trap for me and how there's ramifications, but there's really no ramifications to being with the harlot. So why is it even a problem? So it is because he was a Kohen, and only a Kohen is forbidden. A Kohen is forbidden to being with the zona, right? So there was a ramification even for him being even for chashdu mizona, right? Eshet ish was chayav mita, and the zona wasn't chayav mita, but the zona was still something that was bad for Yirmiyahu, and there was a ramification that he was upset about because if he were to have been with a zona, his children would not have been kohanim anymore; they would have been chalalim. All right, and that's actually what the Maharsha says in the next, or excuse me, that's what the Rif says in the next section. If we go back to the previous page where it says the Iyun Yaakov shechashdu mizona. Iyun Yaakov shechashdu mizona.
Above the Darash Rava.
Above the Darash Rava. Okay, great, thank you. Third line shechashdu mizona. B'shem Nachmani Amash chashdu me'eshidish. Then Iyun Yaakov says something interesting. He says, "Gam Moshe Rabbeinu alav hashalom matzinu vayishma Moshe vayipol al panav shechashdu me'eshet ish." There's a midrash in the Gemara that says that Moshe Rabbeinu was suspected of adultery. Okay, that when Adat Korach came and said, Ki kulam kedoshim v'tacham, that he fell on his face, it's because they suspected him of adultery. That's the Gemara.
What is adultery?
I'll explain it after, okay? אפשר הטעם דשני הנביאים אלו הם השווים בנביאות ובתוכחות. So we have two different midrashim. Relax. We have two different midrashim. We have one that says that Yirmiyahu was suspected of adultery, one that said Moshe Rabbeinu was suspected of adultery. Yaakov says, what's the connection?
Is it an adult?
Yeah, every tree is an adult, yes. That and the Gemara and the Yaakov says, what's the connection between them? So to teach you that the two of them are equal in their neviut and their tochachot. Kedita b'midrash Yalkut daf nunten amagim. Okay, uv'Moshe matzinu she'amru lo Hashem shalach otcha kedita b'tanchuma parashat Korach. L'achei amar Moshe lo Hashem shlachani v'gom. V'chem matzinu b'Yirmiyahu t'meridu b'dunotav v'tochotav. That Moshe Rabbeinu and Yirmiyahu were both rebelled against. But perhaps the significance here of the Yaakov is that if you look back at the first page, where it says Yirmiyahu Perek Tet Zayin, this is the section immediately preceding the story of the people of Anatot attacking him. Vahidvar Hashem elai le'amor lo tikach lecha isha v'lo yu lecha banim uvanot b'makom hazeh. Hashem says to Yirmiyahu, you're not allowed to get married or have children here. Okay, why? Ki kol amar Hashem al habanim ve'al habanot hilodim b'makom hazeh ve'alimotam ve'lilototam ve'alavotam ve'alimotam ba'aretz hazot. Because Hashem says all the children who are born here and all the parents of children who are born here, memotei tachaluim yamutu ve'lo yisapdu ve'lo yikaveu ledomen al pnei adama yu v'cherev v'varav yichlu ve'anif latam lema'achal le'of hashamayim le'vnat haaretz. Hashem says to Yirmiyahu, don't have any children, and he's talking in Anatot, because everyone here is going to die, right? They're all going to get wiped out because of their sins. So you don't, all the children, all the parents. So Hashem forbids Yirmiyahu from getting married and having children. Okay? So perhaps that is and the Yaakov makes this point, perhaps that's the connection between Yirmiyahu and Moshe Rabbeinu. Because why was Moshe Rabbeinu suspected of adultery? It was stemmed from the Lashon Hara that came from Miriam, that he separated from his wife, from Tzipora, and Miriam says, what? We're also, right, I'm also Nivya, and I'm allowed to still be with my husband. Moshe thinks he's too good, right, that he needs to separate from his wife. And she didn't realize that Moshe was on a special status. So also Yirmiyahu, right, the people of Anatot, they see Yirmiyahu is not married, he doesn't have any children, and they say to him, what, he doesn't, of course he must, there's no way that somebody can just exist without having a wife. He must be having something going on. So that's the connection between Moshe and Yirmiyahu, that both of them were suspected by the people that were around them of doing nefarious things, even though they were both Nevi'im who were commanded by Hashem to separate from their spouses, because they had a special mission to fulfill. Okay, so...
I don't know if it's related, but anything parallel, so the second time Miriam gets involved in that couple before that is his parents. She gets upset with her parents for separating when they have Moshe afterwards.
So
he separates and she gets upset with him as well.
So a whole share on that. Yeah, it's a good
connection between the two.
There's a connection between those two. It's a very deep connection. The deep connection is Miriam's prophecy in that midrash is that Amram separates from Yocheved, and she comes with the nevuah and says you have to get back together. And Moshe is the product of that union.
About
what?
Para only said that kill the boys.
Only kill the boys, and you're also getting rid of the girls. So then Amram agrees with her and gets back together with Yocheved, right? And the product of that union is Moshe. So why is Miriam saying Lashon Hara about Moshe separating from Tzipora? Because she says, my nevuah brought our parents back together who were separated, and you're the product of that. So how can you now separate from your wife? You wouldn't even be here if it weren't for me who told our parents to get back together.
That's the Lashon
through
Hara.
nevuah.
The Lashon Hara, when we say Miriam spoke Lashon Hara, that it was about her brother
was that Lashon Hara that she
sleeping with her.
So no, Miriam didn't say she was sleeping with. She was saying Lashon Hara. Why does he have to separate from his wife?
So where's the rumor coming from?
So then the rumor escalated from there in the midrash. The people like her. That's why Miriam started. It shows the power of Lashon Hara, that she had good intentions. She was trying to say to Moshe, you can't separate from Tzipora because only through my nevuah you exist. Mm-hmm. But then the people, that got distorted and taken out of context, and then it led to Lashon Hara, Moshe being accused of actual adultery, which shows you the danger of Lashon Hara, even if it's well intended, which is why Miriam was punished so severely. It's a whole nother issue, but very good, very good. Yeah, it's a very good connection. Yeah, it's like why Miriam was so upset. What was bothering her so much? Okay, I just want to, because we're running a little bit, so I just want to finish this last point I want to make here. Okay, so the Maharsha also comments on this, and then we'll conclude with the last point. Right, it says in the Gemara in Sanhedrin that they suspected Moshe Rabbeinu of adultery, as we just talked about. יש לפרש בזה שמשה וירמיה שניהם שווים היו מוכנים לנבואה לזמן רב. Right, what united Moshe and Yirmiyah and why they both had to be separate from not having a wife is they had to be constantly available for prophecy. Right, Hashem says panim panim. At any moment I can appear to him, so he can't be in the middle of something that is problematic to receive nevuah during. Okay, right? It says about Yirmiyahu that he was from the womb he was destined to be a navi. Right, אמרתי למשה נביא אקים להם כמוך, זה הוכחה מם שנה וזה הוכחה מם שנה. Also, Moshe and Yirmiyahu both rebuked the people for 40 years. They both had to separate from their wives, or potentially never having gotten married in the first place. Right, by Moshe Rabbeinu, you have to stay here with me, and everyone else is allowed to go back to their wives. And so, therefore, both of them were suspected by the fools of their generations. Right, because the fools of the generation said it can't be that a person can go their whole lives without, being with a woman. So it must be that they're actually doing something that they're not supposed to be doing. So the Marsha also makes this connection. Okay. To conclude, I want to read this statement of the Radak, which was a wild. He goes on a whole thing where the question he's trying to deal with is if we go back to the few psukim with Yirmiyahu, it says Vahidvar Hashem elei lemor. Hashem said to me, don't take a wife and don't have children, because Hashem said all the children that are born here and all the parents that are born here in Anatot are going to be destroyed because of their sins. So, what can we ask on that?
Why doesn't he leave there and have kids somewhere else?
Why doesn't he leave there and have kids somewhere else? Good. That's one question you can ask. And what's another question you could ask?
Why doesn't he done for them?
Like, why can't Hashem just spare him and his children? Like, why just because everyone is getting destroyed, does that mean Yirmiyahu shouldn't have kids? Right? Or why can't he go somewhere else? So the Radak says as follows. Yeshi ne mevocha. The Radak says there is a confusion of a twisting of a... This doesn't make any sense. Lama tzivahu ha'el shelo yikach isha v'lo yelid banim u'banot. Lefi shenigzara gzera ala banim ve'ala banot ha'yiludim b'makom hazeh. Right? Just because there's a decree that any children born here are going to be destroyed, why does that mean Yirmiyahu can't have children? Shouldn't Yirmiyahu's children have survived that decree based on his own merit? Don't we know that children only die through the sins of their parents? Right? And Yirmiyahu didn't have that sin, unlike the people of Anatot. And when Hashem says they're all going to be destroyed, so it doesn't mean every single last person. Some of them survived. It just means that they're all going to be punished. As a general collective, they're going to be destroyed. So if some of them could have survived and gone into exile, then why couldn't Yirmiyahu have been included in them? How does the Radak know this? If you just go up to the Vayikra Rabbah quickly, the Midrash right above it, Al Datet Rabbi Shua ben Levi da'amar tshuva asta atakol mimiat lamed me'anshei anotot shene'emar kol mar Hashem habachurim yamutu b'cher v'kevan shesu tshuva zachu l'tichesh shene'emar anshei anotot 128. That when, in the times of Nehemiah, they came back, b'shivat Zion and Bayit Sheni, there's a whole listing of all the different people in the lineages, and it mentions the people of Anatot. There were 128 of them, which means that some of them must have survived the massacre that's prophesied in Yirmiyahu. And so the Midrash in Vayikra Rabbah says that shows that the people of Anatot must have done tshuva. So we see that there is some remnant that survives. So Radak's question is, why couldn't Yirmiyahu have children there? Going back to Radak on the fourth line, Uma sheni ro'eh bezeh hu. כי במקום הזה רוצה לומר בענותות, ובענותות נאמר לו נבואה זו. וזירו שלא ייקח אישה ולא יוליד בנים ובנות. שם, כי נגזרה אשר על הבנים והבנות הנולדים בענותות. So the decree not to have children is specifically in ענותות, which is what Akiva was saying. כיוון שנגזרה גזרה זו על אנשי ענותות כולם, אם יהיו לרמיהו שם בנים ובנות, יסופו בכלל אחרים. So if Yirmiyahu would have children in ענותות, they would be destroyed. כי יוסף צדיק אחד בתוך אלפים אנשים חייבים, כמו שאמרו ללוט פן תספר בעוון העיר. And there's this principle, now he's getting into a bit of theology. We'll actually talk about this in a few weeks, Bezrat Hashem. Later in Bava Kamma talks about this, that when there's when the mashchit is let free, right, when there's a decree of destruction, so also the Rishaim and also the tzaddikim can get swept up in that decree. And that's why Lot was told to flee, because if he stayed in Sodom, he wouldn't have been saved. Everybody would have been destroyed. Right? You'll be swept up in the destruction of the city. Right? והיום מוציאם מהענתות, טרם באה הגזירה, לא היו נספים עם האחרים, אלא שלא היו מניחים אותם קרוביהם בני הענתות, כי לא היו מאמינים בנבואה. So he says, first of all, he could have maybe had kids in another city, like you said. But even if he had kids in that city, why couldn't he have just fled before the destruction? So the Radak claims it's because their relatives wouldn't have let them go. Similar to the story in Lot, where it's like the in-laws are just like, no, this is ridiculous, this is not going to happen. So maybe Yirmiyahu's children wouldn't have been able to leave either, and they would have been convinced to stay, and then they would have been swept up in the destruction of the city. So Hashem said, your children will end up getting destroyed with the rest of the city of Anatot. And even more so, maybe Yirmiyahu himself would have been destroyed if he had stayed there instead of going somewhere else. That's how strong the idea of a city that's deserving of destruction. It could even overcome the zchut of a person like Yirmiyahu, or potentially like Lot.
Why do we say that God couldn't just spare him? Because what was the answer?
So he could have spared him, but the idea is when there's a city that's, the Radak is claiming, when there's a city that, it's like Sodom, when the entire city is been decreed for destruction, so at a certain point, a single tzaddik in the city doesn't merit to be saved if he's still there. It's just this, that's Abraham's whole fight with Hashem. Maybe there's 10, maybe 20. At a certain small number, even someone on the level of Yirmiyahu isn't guaranteed to be saved, because that's just how it works. Right. Exactly. And so now the Radak concludes, and with this we'll conclude, with a question from the Midrash that we just saw in Vayikra, which is, but the people of Anatot did tshuva, and some of them survived. So if some of them survived, why 128 survived at least in the days of Nehemiah, so why couldn't Yirmiyahu and his children be among that group? They didn't all get wiped out. And the answer Radak gives is as follows: V'afal pi shnigzar gzera al anshe Anatot, shelo tiyeh behem she'erit, hayta lehem she'erit, she'asu tshuva. When they came back after the exile, Amar Anshe Anotot 128. That's what we saw in Sefer Nehemiah. And Radak says, Afal Piken Hakel Tziva Yirmiyahu Al Ma She'ayta Gzeratam Tchila Velo Gila K'tshuvatam LeYirmiyahu. Right, what's his answer? That when Hashem says to Yirmiyahu, the people of Anatot are deserving of total destruction. You can't have children here now because you might get swept up in the evil of the city. The fact that they were destined to do tshuva and some of them were able to avoid destruction, in that moment in time, that wasn't the reality on the ground. At that moment, Anatot was deserving of total destruction.
Like hindsight, it's not like you can't
right. So Hashem, it's like Vasher Husham had to command Yirmiyahu not to have children now, even though in the end, there, like retroactively, wasn't a need for that prohibition to even have been said.
It speaks to the nature of tshuva, no? Or like Kol b'yedei Shemayim Shemayim. So like God's plan was to wipe out everyone, but the people doing tshuva had to change and cause a change in Hashem's plan.
And who has a problem with that? What you just said? Yonah has a problem with that. Because
we're gonna see Yom Kippur.
Are we done?
Yes, we're done. Because he says to Nineveh, everyone's going to be destroyed. They do tshuva, and he doesn't like. He says.
He said that they didn't actually make tshuva. There was one machloket if they actually made tshuva.
We're not done.
What?
He's upset because
We're not done. Can I stop? Me? Now? Bye-bye.